Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen and welcome back to our Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, we're going to talk about a lot today, including going through the major indexes, and many of them are short-term extended, especially the NASDAQ Composite and S&P 500. And we'll discuss a little bit about how to trade in this type of environment and how to prepare yourself for a potential stress test sometime next week. We'll also talk about the leadership stocks currently on my list. My previous watch list, how it performed the past week. I'll move on to a few different sources of sentiment, the IBD Big Picture article, and finally the Wishing Wealth GMI Signal. So make sure you guys stay until the end. And if you do enjoy my analysis at any time, go ahead and leave me a like down below. It really helps me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see this type of analysis every single week. So diving in, let's start with the NASDAQ Composite. Obviously, as I said, extended at this point up the majority of the past 15 days here, well above the 21 EMA, and showing a lot of strength, but definitely, as they say, overbought. But remember, stuff can stay extended and overbought much longer than anybody believes. So we want to basically interpret the price action instead of trying to predict some type of pullback, some type of crash. And what I'm doing with my positions currently is moving up my stops and keeping those updated, and basically visualizing anything that can happen next week so I know how I'm going to react. So that's really key. Have a plan going forward. So if we do get a drop of 1% or some type of stress test breaking below these lows here, you're ready and you're not acting in a place of fear. You basically planned everything out and you're very calm and collected, and you know basically your spots, get out of any positions, and you also know what you want to hold on to and potentially add on to if we do see some type of pullback, which I think would be very, very healthy. So that's the NASDAQ Composite. Obviously short-term extended, but also very powerful. I believe we actually just started the Mike Webster power trend, so keep that in mind. And we'll have to see how individual stocks are acting, because we are seeing a lot of positive earnings reactions, which suggests that we are in a risk-on environment. Moving on to the S&P 500, this looks very similar to the NASDAQ. Very short-term extended, once again, trending above the rising 21 and 50 SMA. But once again, very, very strong at this point. You do see a little bit of acceleration the past 3 days. And I think a pullback, just going sideways, correcting in terms of time versus price, would be extremely healthy for the market and set up a nice rally into the end of the year. But we just have to see what happens. We can't always get what we want, and we'll have to see what happens next week. Moving on to the FFTY, the Innovator IBD 50 ETF. This is also trending upwards above a rising 21 and 50 SMA towards the top of the stage 2B cup. So I do want to see a breakout on this, but some consolidation inside days and then a breakout would be very preferred. And that would set up a lot of setups within this index. Also taking a look at the IWO, the Russell 2000 growth here. You can see we've definitively moved past these pivots, and we're starting to trend nicely above a rising 21 and 50 SMA, potentially starting another trend like we saw back in this area. So very constructive action, especially from the smaller caps here. But if we go to the IWM, just in general, even without the growth part, you can see we're breaking out of this nice flat base here. So acting very, very well. And some back tests of this prior base would be completely normal, and I think very constructive and potentially set up a nice trend, as I said, like we saw back in here. So we'll have to see what happens, but it's not just small caps that are acting very well. Obviously, the two institutional quality leaders, NVDA and Tesla, are basically exploding higher, definitely showing a little bit of acceleration in terms of its price advance. So keep that in mind. This is a little bit of a warning signal. Both NVIDIA and Tesla are definitely extended. And if they do pull back, I want to see them kind of consolidate and go sideways instead of pulling back dramatically and undercutting this low. That would not be a great sign for the general market. And speaking of Tesla, we definitely want to take a look at that chart. This has been super strong since its breakout from the stage 2 cup. A nice longer term consolidation, pulling back to the 200-day SMA and breaking through that 780 level right at this point. And then once again, definitely an accelerated move upwards here. And you can see earnings are very strong. The fundamentals are great, but this price advance is very sharp, and I would expect some type of pullback, consolidation, maybe back towards the 1,000 level. And Tesla and NVIDIA are kind of the large cap leaders, but we also see some strength from Google, as well as stocks like Amazon, which is trying to move up the bottom of its base here. So once again, this is kind of a critical point for this stock. I definitely want to see it start to push out and break into all-time highs, and I don't want to see it roll over through the bottom of this base right here. And we are seeing some weakness here with a stock like Netflix not participating quite as much, but did have a nice rally but it has broken the 21 EMA for the first time in quite a while. One thing that does give me a lot of confidence is we are seeing a lot of positive reactions to earnings. ABNB, for example, is one I'm definitely eyeing. I actually started a position on this day right here at around 193. Not the greatest entry, but definitely one I'm watching for some type of consolidation, then a break through the HVC or the high of this day here, managing risk right at the swing low. And definitely want to watch. I mean, you've got fantastic earnings, sales, margins. If we bring out the fund ownership, steady increase here quarter after quarter, and a whole bunch of high quality funds in here as well. And the overall pattern is extremely strong, moving up the right hand side of its first longer term consolidation, primary base, institutional due diligence phase, whatever you want to call it. And I also like how the character of the stock has changed a little bit here. You can see it was very wide and loose up near its advance near 220 here after its IPO base, but now it's tightening up a little bit, and hopefully we start to see some nice trending action through here up into the all-time high. So ABNB definitely one to watch, but we did have some bombs last week. Peloton, for instance, here, this RS rating has been declining. It's been like 17, 19, even 7 here, and for me, I've tried it a few times right here maybe, but really this stock kind of changed character as it broke the 50-day right here and hasn't quite been the same, and now the 200-day is curling over. So I like stocks that are gapping up and in long-term uptrends above a rising 200-day moving average. I tried it up in here just to try to get an early entry through this pivot right here, but I was easily stopped out, and you can see the market just isn't liking the stock at this moment. It's under distribution, and you can see the high volume here. So bulls definitely want to see it hold at this point near this high volume close, build something, and try to recover. But regardless, really, whatever happens with the stock, it's going to need a lot of time. And at this moment, it's not a leader, and I like to focus on leaders. So just bringing up Zoom, for example, people thought this was the bottom, here, here, and here. And there's not just a cost to your money if it declines from your buy point. If you're trying to catch these bottoms, there's also the kind of trade-off where you could be trading stuff, trading at all-time highs, making profits for you, while this is just in a longer-term choppy consolidation. So keep that in mind. Definitely focus on leaders just starting to break out and move out of bases versus those prior leaders that are now consolidating their huge moves of last year. So those are a few stocks worth mentioning. Obviously, AMD, also a leader that I'm watching. A nice push after earnings. A little bit of profit taking on this Friday on decently high volume downside reversal, so keep that in mind. Once again, very short-term extended. Many of the leaders are at this point, so I wouldn't mind some type of sideways consolidation next week, and then potentially it reconfirms higher through 140s. So keep that in mind. Many of the names that I'm watching and even holding are definitely short-term extended and could experience a pullback, and you just have to be ready and know what your plan is going forward before that happens, so nothing catches you off guard. And moving on to the potential leaders, let's sort by that weekly change. And SI was the top performer from this list. A great breakout inside weekend up, and there's one I do own, looks really strong, and even the pullback the past 2 days is on declining volume, and definitely a theme overall to watch. The crypto theme, along with coin, this is one of the leaders in terms of stocks within that space. Mara as well, a nice move. This is also crypto related, also bringing out of a long-term base, so always good to have that kind of group confirmation. ABNB, as we already mentioned, nice earnings gap up here, huge volume as well. This is key. This is definitely the highest volume in quite a while since this area right here, so definitely some institutions interested in this name. Moving on, we've got NVDA, as I mentioned, super strong, breaking out of this consolidation, but very extended as well, and I do want to see it hold this gap up below. Bill.com, another breakout here. This is the third breakout within this cycle here, getting a little bit extended. Nice closing range, even though it did dip all the way down here. Looks pretty good above all the moving averages. AMD, short-term extended, but above all the moving averages, looks great. AEHR, nice push here. A strong reversal on this day after being down about 8%, and nice fall through, although on pretty low volume the last 3 days of last week. DDOG, another breakout on earnings. Once again, you're a little bit later stage. You're not on the first gap up after earnings, and actually this one was the most powerful gap here, and now you're a little bit later stage, but definitely want to watch going forward because this is a very long consolidation, about 8-10 months, so this could have reset. HUT also moving up. You can see a nice push early on in the week, consolidating, pulling back into the 10-day on declining volume, looks pretty constructive. Tesla, super powerful, but extended, as I mentioned. Zscaler riding that 10-day to higher prices, looks great. And if you do own a name like Zscaler or NVIDIA or Tesla, which is really taking off here and is short-term extended, be ready and be aware that we could have a vicious pullback here, undercutting a lot of lows in a row, and basically know in advance how you're going to handle that, because it will happen and these will pause, let the 21 EMA catch up to price, even the 50-day catch up to price. So just be ready for whatever can happen next week. Skin tried to break out here, pulling back the rest of the week. Looks pretty good. The pullbacks are on below average volume. DOCN, nice breakout after earnings here. Downside reversal, but on lower volume the next day. Lucid, nice breakout here on the highest volume ever. And I did catch it on this day right here. Looks pretty strong. Great volume coming in as well. And I do want to see it continue to fall through from these levels. Moving on to coin, it's just kind of riding the 10-day to higher prices. Looks pretty good. I do want to see it just kind of consolidate before earnings and then ideally have an earnings breakout. I do own this stock at this moment, and always be aware, especially during earnings season, when those dates are for your stocks, so you have a plan going into them. AMBA, just riding that 10-day to higher prices, looks great. SC above all the moving averages, consolidating a little bit, and Task is still going sideways after its offering back in this area. You can see the high volume here. And it is declining on below average volume, so maybe we get some type of ignite bar through all the moving averages through this pivot as well, and definitely want to watch because of the strong prior uptrend. Upwork, I'll probably take this off this list, just kind of back at its 200-day, not really a leader at this point. And moving on, we've got UPST going sideways on declining volume, another one to watch into next week. EMPH, nice earnings gap up here into all-time highs, and I want to see this kind of pull back into the 10-day and set up a spot where you can manage risk against. Dash, once again, not really leading at this point. You had a gap down, so I'll take this off this list at this moment. MTDR holding that 21 EMA, and it's just kind of going sideways on declining volume, but you do have a downside reversal, a little bit of a warning sign at this point. Moving on to net, you can see it didn't have a great reaction to earnings, but it is holding the 10-day at this moment above all the key moving averages. Definitely, once again, very extended from a proper base. FRM tried to break out here, then you can see it was hit a little bit from the Peloton news and is holding an inside day. So a pretty good reaction, honestly, on below average volume. And we'll have to see how its earnings are this upcoming week on the 10th. Sentinel, very choppy in here. Not really leading at this point. Zscaler is the leader in my mind, but I do have it on this list because it's also a recent IPO, but pretty wide ranges. I would want to see this tighten up before looking for an entry. Unity, pretty choppy in here, but it is trying to ride that 21 EMA to higher prices. App riding the 10-day looks decent, going sideways the past few days on declining volume, which could be constructive here. But you definitely want to see it confirm through these highs. A little bit wicky at around the 100 level. Crowd, not great action on this Friday, taking out the high and low of the prior day's range. And once again, Zscaler is the leader in this space, in that arena. SPT having trouble here, not a great bar on this day. I'm not sure if this was earnings, but nevertheless holding the key moving averages at this moment. Domo, not great action either, but holding above the 50-day, although it is declining. Once again, not really a leader at this point. InMode holding the 10-day looks decent. Next up, we've got Perry, and this is pulling back into the 10-day after the highest volume ever here, so this could be offering a spot sometime soon. Team pulling back. This is kind of the third or second gap here, so a little bit lower probability, but we'll have to see whether this can form a nice U and push out into all-time highs. LC, nice gap, also the second here, and you do have nice volume, not quite as much volume as back here, but is acting pretty constructive, pulling back on below average of volume. Netflix, as I mentioned earlier, breaking the 21 EMA for the first time in a while. ASAN going sideways on reasonably low volume, looks pretty constructive. Burrows pulling back here, bounced off the 21 EMA area, and this could be set up for next week. And lastly, we've got Apt, which had earnings and had a gap and go to the downside. So definitely coming off this list, and you definitely want to see it build out a range if you're long here and start to push up and fill this gap. So overall, pretty good action from the leaders. Many of them are short-term extended. The crypto-related names are the strongest this week, and we'll have to see what happens in the coming week. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. I'll be posting my next list of ideas. And speaking of my watch list, let's go ahead and go through those names that we haven't already talked about, and let's sort by that weekly change. So overall, if we sort by that weekly change, SI was a top performer. We've already talked about that. ABNB as well. SoFi, nice push after a pullback on below average volume. Great volume as well to the upside. This also has earnings on the 10th. Many of my names actually do. Skin, we already talked about. Coin as well. UPST, all these as well. Perry, Roblox still doing not much of anything below all the key moving averages. This is one that's very tough to trade. Monday, below the key moving averages doesn't look great. And MQ as well, very wide ranges, didn't tighten up like I wanted, and is now below the 21 EMA. So overall, some good performers, especially SI, ABNB, SoFi from last week. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, as I mentioned, my next list of ideas. Moving on to sentiment, let's first take a look at my surveys on Twitter. We're seeing a drop from 53.7% bullish to only 38.4%, which is very surprising given we're moving on into all-time highs. So we are climbing a wall of worry at this moment. Looking at the name exposure index, this is very high, which once again is a little bit of a warning sign at 107.99. Historically, this is a pretty extreme number, so keep that in mind as well. We may be in for some type of stress test or dramatic pullback in the coming days and weeks. So just be ready and have a plan for all your positions going into a potential event like that. Looking at the put call ratio, this is very low at this moment. Once again, a little bit extreme. And the bulls versus bears poll, you can see we're back towards approaching 60. So a little bit extreme in terms of sentiment, except for my sentiment surveys. And definitely some reasons to be cautious, especially with the name exposure index. Moving on to the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is stock market rally continues as jobs, earnings aid equities. Are bears hibernating or ready to ambush? I discuss how we took off a distribution day and also the strong action from the indexes, but also how we're now 6% above the 50-day moving average on the NASDAQ and 5% on the S&P 500, definitely a little bit short-term extended. But they also discuss the factors that are boosting stocks, strong jobs report, some other factors as well. And they discuss CFLT as well as ABNB. So overall, their take is a confirmed uptrend with one distribution day on the S&P 500. You've got some layers up on volume and some down on volume as well. Finally, we've got the GMI Signal, which is still green since October 15th. And Dr. Wish discusses a little bit about his TQQQ strategy, which is definitely interesting and worth a read if you haven't yet. So overall, my current view is still a confirmed uptrend, but I definitely think we're short-term extended at this point on the general market, and many of the leaders are short-term extended as well. So what I would encourage you to do is pick your spots in your current stocks, know which ones you want to let go, rank your holdings, and basically know which ones you want to hold for the long term and which you're ready to let go if they do hit that raise stop. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.